Hello, friends. Welcome to Chickenlandia and welcome to Bawk Talk, your 100% friendly backyard chickens show. I am your host, Dahlia, also known as the president of Chickenlandia. I'm a backyard chicken educator that has found peace and joy in the chicken yard, and it is my mission to help you find that too. Welcome back, everyone. Today is episode 2 of season 5. We are going to talk about some important things that you need to know to keep that stress level down, especially if this is your first year of having laying hens. We don't want any negative surprises, okay? So we're going to talk about important things that you should know about your new laying hens. And I have a few listener questions that were sent to me through my website, welcome to chickenlandia.com. I'm going to be answering those, and then I will open up the chat here live on YouTube for more questions. If you want to submit a question to Bawk Talk so that you can be chicken famous, okay? All you have to do is go to welcometochickenlandia.com, go to the contact section. While you are there, you're going to want to sign up for the Chickenlandia Nation mailing list. And I will send you, once you sign up, okay, it's the greatest mailing list in all of the multiverses, the greatest chicken mailing list. I don't want to make too big a claim. The greatest chicken mailing list of all the multiverses, okay? I will send you a discount for my online course. It's called Chickenlandia's Backyard Chickens 101, a chicken course for everyone. It is an interactive course. You get direct access to me and the Chickenlandia presidential advisor, who will be, if she's not in the chat, she will be here soon. She's my co-instructor on that course. It's a great opportunity, and you'll get a discount for it. So definitely check that out. I hope to see you there. All right. I want to say hello to some of the people in the chat. Sherry's here. Handy Prepper is here. Das Roberts is here. Tamasita, Lisa is here. Who knows is here. Joy is here. Peace of My Heart Homestead. Natalie is here. I might maybe not pronouncing that right because you have it spelled differently. So I might not be pronouncing that right. I'm sorry. Debbie is here. Oh, there's the Chickenlandia presidential advisor. Thank you for being here. It's so good to see all these people here. Thank you so much for being here today. Oh, there's the Naked Gardeners. Just came in. Good to see you guys. Okay, so I want to start out by talking about some of the things that catch people by surprise during their first year with laying hens. This usually it always has to do with eggs. Okay, so that's where we're going to start out with the subject of eggs and egg laying. So I think, one of the first things that people get concerned about is that they were told that their chickens were supposed to start laying eggs at 16 to 20 weeks, and they don't know why the heck they haven't gotten their first egg yet. And they're starting to get annoyed, okay? Because that's like the bonus, right? That's why we do this. That's a big reason why we do this. We want to get eggs. We want our fresh eggs in the morning. Well, the first thing I want to say is that if your chickens are older than 20 weeks and you haven't seen an egg yet, I want you to do me and do yourself a favor and go on an egg hunt in your yard. All right, because sometimes, chickens, they might not be the best at laying eggs where you really want them to lay their eggs, which would normally be in their nesting boxes. And they will lay them all kinds of places all over their yard, especially if they're free ranging. And they'll lay them in places where humans can't find them. Okay, so definitely start there. Start looking for eggs. You may find a batch of like 20 eggs somewhere and be really, really surprised. So do that first before you conclude that there's something wrong and that they haven't started laying yet. Just make sure that they're not laying in like some flower pot somewhere or in your garage or something. Okay. Try that first. The other thing that might be happening is that your chicken has come into lay during a time of year that is not conducive to laying. So for what I mean by that is, if you, like, let's say you're just now getting baby chicks. It's the beginning of August. You decided, okay, you know what? It's time. I'm going to get baby chicks now. So your flock, if you get them this week, your flock is not going to reach laying age until the days are shorter and we're going into winter. Okay? So chickens need a certain number of daylight hours to complete their ovulation cycle. So unless you are supplementing light in your coop, don't be surprised if your new little flock, they've reached laying age, but they wait until the days get longer to actually start laying. And in fact, my first flock, I got them in July, and I didn't get my first eggs until January or February. Okay. And it was because my chickens waited until after the winter solstice, after the days got a little bit longer, and then they started laying. And I was like, oh my gosh. By that time, I had forgotten. Like, am I supposed to get eggs? It had been so long, I had forgotten. And then it was like this amazing thing. I was like, oh my gosh, there's an egg. Oh yeah, that's part of the reason why I had chickens. It's a big reason why I got them in the first place, is the eggs. So that was a nice surprise. But it didn't come until later. Now, if your chickens are just now reaching laying age, like let's say right now, like this week is like they're at 20 weeks, and you're wondering, why haven't I seen any eggs yet? It is likely that it's just too hot right now, depending on where you live, for them to start laying. So during the summer months, if you live in a climate where it gets hot, your chickens, it gets more hot. If you live in a place where it just doesn't get that hot, then this might not be your experience. But definitely, if you're somewhere, like if you're in the southern states here in the U.S., and it gets pretty hot, and the chickens they might wait until the weather cools down a little bit before they start laying again. Even right now where I am, it's in the 80s every day, like, and that's hot for where I live. I'm from Texas, so I'm like, when people complain, I'm like, what are you talking about? It's 80. But anyway, it's all relative. They've slowed down a little bit right now, because to my chickens who are acclimated to the weather here where I live, they're like, oh, it's hot. So they're still laying. But if you live in an area where there's like significant heat waves, if they're happening right now, then your chickens will likely wait until it cools down a little bit to start laying. But I promise you they will. If they're laying hens, they will start to lay. Okay. Now, let's say, here's another scenario. You've had your chickens for over a year. They always laid really well. But right now, all of a sudden, you're experiencing a major drop in their laying. And you're also seeing lots of feathers around the yard. And your chickens are looking a little bit scraggly, or maybe a lot scraggly if you have frizzles. What is likely happening is that they are going through their first adult molt. So chickens go through a lot of molts before they reach adulthood. Like when they're baby chicks, they start out like little fuzz balls, and then they drop that fuzz and they start to grow in feathers, and then they go through juvenile molts, but they don't go through their first adult molt until they're probably around 18 months old. So you may be going into that season now, depending on how long you've had your chickens, and you're seeing that there's not a lot of eggs. There's a bunch of feathers in the yard. Chickens are looking a little scraggly. Don't worry, they will start laying again. But right now, their bodies are working on just really focusing all that energy and resources on growing new healthy feathers for the winter that is going to be coming soon. Okay. I mean, not that soon. Let's not bring it that soon. I want more warm weather. So yeah, but definitely I call molting season, and you might not be in it yet. Usually it's late summer, early fall, but it will happen, and likely will happen soon. During that time, I call it molting season, but it's also parasite season, because when chickens are molting, they're a little bit more vulnerable to that kind of stuff. So during that time, I want you to be really diligent. Make sure your parasite preventative things that you're doing, like making sure they have areas where they can dust bathe, checking them periodically to make sure they don't have external parasites going on, making sure they have good nutrition, making sure you're keeping up with the coop and everything like that, just to keep the chances down that they are going to get an infestation of external or internal parasites during this time. So keep an eye on that, and then be patient and the eggs will come, I promise. So I'm going to move on to the first listener question after I take a drink of water. Look at this is my new copper water bottle. I'm just in love with this thing. All right. Okay, this is from Melanie, and Melanie says, hello. We have 17 to 21 week old. Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Okay, sorry. We have 17 to 20 week old chickens, 2 roosters, and 12 hens that free range. We have 1 hen that has been laying daily for 2 weeks right in the nesting boxes, but we have 1 or 2 others who lay anywhere but the nesting boxes. I have seen that in order to break them of this habit, they need to be confined for up to 2 weeks. They love being out and about, so I hate to leave them cooped up for so long. Can you discuss training them to lay in the nesting boxes instead of obscure places? Thanks, Melanie. All right, so it is true that if you want to be sure and get them into the habit of using the nesting boxes, you will very likely have better luck if you keep them in your coop and in an enclosed run. If you have an enclosed run attached to the coop, keep them enclosed in that for a week or 2 so that they learn exactly where they need to lay. And likely within that area, they're the best place to them, according to them, to lay would be the nesting boxes. But I also understand not wanting to confine them for so long, and I would probably feel the same because I'm a big sucker for these birds. Okay. But don't lose hope. There are some things that you can do to entice them to lay in the nesting boxes instead of all over the place. The number one thing you need to do is I want you to think like a chicken, okay? And what I mean by that is ask yourself how you can make your nesting boxes attractive to your hens. So what you want is for them, for your chickens to look at the nesting boxes and to think to themselves, oh, this is really good. This is a good place. It's peaceful. It's quiet. It's a private place for me to lay my eggs. I know my eggs are going to be safe in this place. Okay. Chickens they actually don't want anyone finding their eggs. So if they feel like there's a place that's more secret and more safe and more private and calm and everything than their nesting boxes, they will lay in those places rather than their nesting boxes. So make sure that your nesting boxes are in a quiet, kind of a darker place in your coop. If your coop is very lit, then, let's say you have a lot of sun coming in or whatever, you can use curtains in front of the nesting boxes or some other thing to kind of make them a little bit more private. Have good nesting material that is comfortable inside their nesting boxes. I found out recently, I use nesting pads from my favorite chicken, and I really love them, and my chickens love them, but I ran out of them, so I started using this is kind of dumb, but I started, well, maybe not. I don't know. I put some pine pellets in the nesting boxes, and my chickens are like, no, we don't like these. These aren't comfortable. They're not soft. We are spoiled. We are not laying in here. So there's 2 nesting boxes that have pine pellets, and then there's 1 nesting box that has a nice soft nesting pad in it, and they go to that one. They don't go to the one with the pine pellets. Okay. So make sure you have good nesting material. And that can be so many things. It could be an old towel. It could be leaves. It could be, pine needles or something. As long as it's soft, shavings, as long as it's soft and comfortable for them, then they will like that. If there are other places in the yard that seem to be more attractive to them, you need to make them less attractive. Okay. So I have an area in my chicken yard. It is under the ramp that goes into the coop. There's like a tarp over it, and so it's a dark area, and then there's this place under the ramp, and it's so hard to get in there, and they will go in there and lay the eggs, and sometimes a broody will go in there and get broody. So what I did was I took a bunch of rocks, like big uncomfortable rocks, and I put them under the ramp so that they're not tempted to go in there because it's not as attractive to them anymore. So now they're using their nesting boxes more. Okay, because you don't want to be like crawling and going everywhere trying to get eggs. The other thing you can do is put some fake eggs, like some ceramic eggs or some golf balls in the nesting boxes, and just leave them in there. And, chickens are like, if they see other eggs in that area, they may go and lay in there. They're more likely to go and lay in there. Okay, so doing these things will hopefully convince your chickens to lay in the right spot to make things easier for you. So I hope this helps, Melanie. I really do. All right. Speaking of laying all over the yard, speaking of the chicken yard anyway, this next question is one I get a lot from both new chicken keepers and seasoned chicken keepers. So this one is from Jenny. Hey there. I love your show and I'm so grateful for your teachings. Thank you so much. I see you actually have plants and some grass in your run. I am going to be building my own big run, and I was hoping you would share a plant list if you plant a particular chicken hardy grass, and if so, what is it? How do you keep some green in your big run? Question mark, exclamation point, question mark. Thanks again, Jenny in Colorado. Okay, so I don't use any kind of special grass in my run. It's just the grass that was here when we moved here. I do get this question a lot. People are like, how do you still have grass in your run? And the answer is I just have a lot of space. I have a really big run, and most of my chickens are really small. I have mostly bantams. Some of them are teeny tiny bantams. They weigh like, a few ounces. I don't even know how much run space I have because I just added to it. So off the top of my head, I don't know how much run space I have, but it's a lot. And then I have this huge coop. So just the more space you have for your chickens, the more likely they will not destroy all the foliage in that space. On my last property, I did not have any grass in the run whatsoever. I had a mud garden that I had to manage all the time. But I did have one juniper bush. And I have found that juniper is such a great thing to have in your chicken yard. The juniper bushes I currently have in my chicken yard were actually so I had just like this one big juniper bush in my last chicken yard. The ones I have now, if you see in the videos, those ones were actually super expensive. And it's so funny because I did not know. Okay, I am like, sometimes I'll just like get something and I'll get it in my head like I want this, and I don't realize how expensive it is. And all the other little trees around it, or little bushes around these plants, were reasonably priced. So I guess I just had this assumption that they were going to be reasonably priced. And I went through the checkout and they were so expensive because it's like, if you look at them, they're not like how they would naturally grow. It's actually like a short trunk. And then the bush part is grafted onto the top. So that's why they look so cool and they offer such good shade. But it also made them really super expensive. And I was buying all these other trees and everything. And she's like, okay, here's the price. And I was like, okay. And I just paid for them. I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? They're great. I love them, but there's so many cheaper options than what I have in my yard. There's just like regular juniper bushes and just a lot of the evergreen bushes and trees, like dwarf trees. those to me are the best. Like the chickens will eat a little bit off the bottom of them, but they won't go crazy. They won't completely destroy them. Now, when you first plant them, for probably at least a month, depending, and maybe longer, depending on the age and the size of the plant or the tree or the bush, you will need to protect those roots. I had, if you look at some of my old videos around the little bushes that I had like wiring to keep the chickens from just literally like digging them up and really harming the roots. Okay, you don't want that. But there's a lot of evergreens that will be great. I feel like the bushes are the easiest to maintain and they offer the most shade. There are a few books about having beautiful gardens in the chicken run. I am not so talented as to have this amazing garden in the chicken run. There's one that I really like. It's called Free Range Chicken Gardens. And when I look at it, a lot of it, I'm just like, this is impossible. Like, I will never do this. But I know, at least I know it can be done because I'm looking at it in the book. And it gave me some good ideas and basically just gave me the confidence to actually plant something in the run and not have it get killed. So I'm not sponsored by, I don't even know who publishes that book. And I don't know who the author is. It's a beautiful book. I'll leave the link in the description if you're interested. So yeah. And I mean, if you see a plant and you're like, I wonder if that'll do well, you probably just like do a quick search and see whether or not it will. Most plants will succumb to a flock of chickens. So you got to be really careful and you really have to manage. You really have to protect the plants to make sure they don't get destroyed. All right. So I'm going to do one last question that was submitted, and then we'll start in with the live questions. And we're going to switch gears a little bit because I think this is important. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes first-time chicken people will write to me with concerns about possible health risks that they could be bringing into their lives or to their family's lives by having backyard chickens. And I don't blame them for this because every year there's a salmonella scare, and it seems like every year we're told that backyard chickens are to blame, and there's articles coming out about how backyard chickens present this danger. And I am not in any way saying that salmonella is not serious and that it isn't a possible risk. It is. I have to be honest and say that there is a risk when you bring chickens into your life, just like if you were to bring, a parrot into your life, if you bring a lizard into your life, cats can present a certain type of risk. Life is full of risks. All right. And I always say it's risk against risk. All right. So to me, what is funny is that all this attention is being placed on this relatively small risk that backyard chickens present concerning salmonella, compared with the risk that we take just by, eating factory farmed food and other big food industry practices. So, I think we would have, in fact, I know that there is a much bigger risk just in contracting something from a piece of packaged watermelon that you got from the gas station, like that is more of a risk. Sandwich meat. Chicken that you bought at the grocery store, these are greater risks than you contracting something from your chickens. But I digress. I don't want to get too much into that. I always get in trouble. Somebody always leaves me a comment because they don't like what I just said. I'm not saying there's no risk at all. All right. I'm just saying we have to keep everything in perspective. So here is a question that I got that I think it was important to answer. This is from Christina. Hello, I just found your channel on YouTube and I'm starting to learn about raising up to 6 chickens in my backyard. I don't have a lot of land, less than an acre. That's fine. That's more than enough. All right. My father-in-law is freaking out. That's not good. You don't want father-in-law to freak out. That my children are going to end up with histoplasmosis from the chicken droppings. I don't know enough about this, but I thought you might. How do we reduce our risk? Is this really something to be concerned about? Thank you, Christine. Okay. So let me start out by sharing exactly what she is talking about, histoplasmosis. It is primarily a lung infection that is caused by breathing in fungal spores that are found in the fecal matter in the droppings of birds and bats. It can live in the soil, and usually the way people get it is they are cleaning an area where there's lots of bird or bat fecal matter, or they're doing construction, or they're demolishing something in that area. But the thing that is needed is a large amount of bird or bat fecal matter, okay? Most of the time, it is completely asymptomatic. But it can cause serious disease in young children and babies. And if you are someone that is immunocompromised, it could be very dangerous for you. So we know that bats can live in these huge colonies naturally in nature. I assume none of you are hanging out in a bat cave unless you're the Dark Knight, okay? Are you the Batman? You don't have to tell me. You can keep that a secret. So probably you're not at risk from bats. Maybe you are. That would be interesting if you're working with bats. But likely people that are listening to my podcast or watching me on YouTube, they're not like hanging out among bat colonies. What I would say about your risk from backyard chickens is that it is very low and really not something for at least the people that listen to my podcast to worry about. Okay. Why do I say that? Because you are not likely to have the conditions present that creates a high risk for something like this. Need to take a drink. All right. If you are in my audience, you're going to very likely have your coop relatively clean. It's not going to be sterile, but it's going to be clean, reasonably clean. You're not letting the poop build up in, this way that's going to be super high risk. And I'm not talking about the deep litter method, because the deep litter method is a method that creates good bacteria in your coop. And if you do it right, you wouldn't be dealing with something like this. The places where there is truly a risk for something like this is, honestly, like places like factory farms. That's why if you've ever witnessed workers that are cleaning factory farm conditions, or they're going into a factory farm after a big cull or something like that, they're going to be wearing respirators. They're going to be in a full outfit to protect themselves, because they are in a very dangerous environment where it's not just a risk of histoplasmosis. There are so many dangers there that are present in such a filthy, inhumane place. Okay. Having said this, is your risk 0%? No, it is not. I can't tell you that you are 0% of this. There is you're working with chicken feces. Chickens poop a lot. That is just the nature of chicken keeping. But every day we absorb so much more risk, just by existing on this planet. So if it were me, I really wouldn't worry about it. I would just use common sense. And this is going to help with so many other things, because this isn't the only thing, that you could possibly get if you don't have good hygiene and you're not taking care of your chickens well. Wash your hands after you deal with your chickens. Get your kids in the habit of washing their hands after they deal with their chickens. Don't have your baby on your back, while you're cleaning the chicken coop, or have your immunocompromised family member or friend with you while you're cleaning your chicken coop. If you're immunocompromised, you really shouldn't be out there cleaning your chicken coop, okay? I think most people would know that. If they had some kind of condition like that, they would know not to do that. You can wear a mask, if you're cleaning out your dusty coop, to keep that stuff out of your lungs. And even just without the risk of some kind of lung thing happened, like you want to keep fungal lung disease, you want to keep that dust out of your lungs because that's not good for you anyway. So above all, just remember, use common sense, wash your hands, keep the coop relatively clean, have good practices. And remember that we have, human beings have been keeping chickens for thousands of years. And traditionally, we've had them in conditions that are outside, in nature, well ventilated, no overcrowding, in conditions that aren't conducive to just like really terrible infestations or disease. When we have this good relationship, this great symbiotic relationship with chickens that works for both of us, then that's going to be a healthier relationship. And we're supposed to be around each other. Chickens and people are supposed to be around each other. We've done this for a really long time. So keep that in mind. I really hope this can help calm some of your father-in-law's worries. I don't think he's completely off the mark having that kind of concern. But I think that, just having the right information and keeping things in perspective, that will really help to realize, this isn't as big of a risk as I thought it was. And we can go forward with something that's really going to enrich our lives. Okay. So thank you so much for your question, Christine. I really hope that helps. Okay. So I'm about to open up the chat for questions. The first thing I need to do is make 2 announcements because once again, it's that chicken math, people. I adopted another super cute chicken. She's a total diva. She is demanding treats. I'm going to have even bigger chicken bills, okay? So I got to pay those chicken bills. And because of that, I want to let you know that this podcast was brought to you by the folks at My Favorite Chicken. My Favorite Chicken is my favorite online shop to get my feed. I get my non-GMO, organic, and socially responsible scratching peck feed there. My chicken supplies, my fun chicken things like my chicken apron and my chicken purse. Lots of treats. I will leave a link for you in the show notes. It is My Favorite Chicken. This podcast is also brought to you by Small Pet Select. Small Pet Select is a small local company to me, and they have an online store that I know you're going to love. Right now, I am using 3 of their products. I was using some of their treats, like their scratch. I like their scratch. I'm also using their pet greens. I'm always using that. Going into winter, I'm going to be using that more. That's just like an easy way to grow greens for your chickens. Super fun, especially for kids. And I'm right now using their flaked oyster shell, which my chickens actually really like. They actually eat it like right in front of me. You can check out these products and their other chicken products and their products for other small little furry animals by clicking the link in the show notes. There is a coupon for you. So go check them out. All right. Okay. Now I am going to open up the chat for questions. If you can please put your question in all capital letters, it will be easier for me to see it. Thomasita says, I am Batwoman. All right. Yeah. Oh, you have bat houses. That's great. Okay, so Ashley asks, I'm thinking about adding ducks to our flock. Good idea? Should we get more than 2? You should get as many as can comfortably live in your space, with the knowledge that ducks are so adorable and cute and funny, and they're really stinky and they're wet and they make things muddy and they're like way dirtier than chickens. Okay, so if you have a smaller space, I would consider, you can get to, If you can get 3 or 4, that's probably better, just because it will be easier if you lose 1 or 2 and then you need to add 1 or whatever. It's just easier. But ducks aren't as intense about the pecking order as chickens are. So I've found that it's a lot easier to add ducks into a flock. So you could get to, I would make sure, the thing is that you can't have like a full-size drake with your chickens. Okay. And the reason for that is because, and I know I have Mr. Robot, but Mr. Robot is tiny and he can barely mate as it is. He tries. Bless his heart, he tries. Right now, he's not trying that much because he's older and he's had a lot of medical problems. So, and he's a special needs guy. So, but back in the day when he was young, he would give it the old college try. But he's a tiny little duck, and he's not going after my chickens. Okay, if I had a full-size drake in with my chickens, especially like bantam chickens or whatever, that drake could kill your chickens. And the reason is that they don't have the same anatomy. They really have different anatomy than roosters, and they can really physically harm your chickens by trying to mate with them. So you don't want to do that. But you could have a few little, a couple duck hens. I think that's a great idea, as long as you have the room for it and you're prepared. You understand that they are going to create conditions that your chickens don't create. In other words, they're going to make things a lot messier. Okay, but ducks are super fun. I love them. So my vote is yes. Barbara asks, this might be a silly question, but my small dog eats chicken poop. I try to pick it up, but seem to miss some. Is this safe for my dog? It depends on the dog. I would try to discourage it, but honestly, like farm dogs, they're like eating chicken poop and all kinds of poop and all the time. I have dogs that I have to be really careful because they've been bred in a way where they just are not resilient in that arena, and so they can get one in particular gets a stomachache really easily. So it really depends on your dog. There are things that your dog can pick up. Generally, a dog is going to have a lot more stronger of a stomach than a human being is, at least in the Western world. But I would do my best to try and discourage that behavior and to pick up as much as you can. If your dog gets a little bit of it, I wouldn't worry, a lot about it, unless you are seeing that your dog isn't feeling well. But it is, usually the parasites that birds can get are not going to transfer into a dog. It depends on what it is. But like let's say there's some kind of parasite that it gosh, what am I trying to say? Parasites, every species has its own parasites. So, in most cases, the parasites that will affect your chickens will not affect your dogs. That's not to say that there's never any crossover, but in most cases that you're kind of safe with that. Now, there's other things like bacteria and stuff that you would want to protect your dog from. So again, it's not a silly question at all. Whenever I see my dogs eating chicken poop, I really try to stop them. Just, not even because not only because it's bad for them, but also it makes their breath stink and they like to lick our faces and stuff. Having said that, farm dogs are doing this all the time. There's dogs that's like literally their career. They just walk behind the chickens and eat the poop. So, yeah, I can't give you a definitive answer. It really depends on the dog, but I would try to not have them do that. Ashley asks, what nesting material is your favorite? I really like the nesting pads from My Favorite Chicken. That's what I've been using for years. They have like herbs, aromatic herbs infused in the nesting pads. And I like to spoil my chickens with them. They smell good and the chickens seem to like them. So that's what I like. But it certainly doesn't have to be anything that fancy. Uh, Shane says, I'm getting hens, 4 in all. Will Isa Browns and Australorps get along just fine? Yeah, they should get along just fine. Um, especially if they grow up together, if they're together, they will get along just fine. You don't have to like segregate them by breed. Chickens will definitely get along with other breeds of chickens, even different sizes of chickens. Um, they should be just fine. Excellent choice. Oh, Joy says she's awaiting Merrick's test results. Joy, I am sorry about that. I know that's probably really stressful. I really encourage you to watch listen to my podcast about Merrick's disease. I think it will calm you a little bit, because there's a lot said about Merrick's disease. It's kind of the boogeyman in the chicken keeping world. And it's important to keep everything in perspective and to have all the facts in front of you. So I encourage you to listen to that podcast. I don't know what I will try to remember to put it in the show notes because I don't even know what season it is, but it's called like The Truth About Merrick's Disease or something like that. So good luck with that. So Kate asks, treatment for symptoms of mycoplasma. My flock was diagnosed last year. So definitely if you got a proper diagnosis, that lets me know that you're working with a licensed veterinarian. And I would certainly follow all the veterinarian's advice concerning that. I do have what I can tell you is how to how to offer supportive care for your chickens if they're having a respiratory thing going on. Okay? Because I'm not a licensed veterinarian, though my disclaimer is rolling right now. So there is a podcast that I put out a couple years ago about respiratory illness in chickens and some things that you can do to kind of get them through that. That's something that's going to be present in your flock, but I don't think it's like this horrible death sentence for you. You will have chickens that handle it better. You will have chickens that don't handle it that well. You might have chickens that live with it for ages and they just, they have like their bouts of illness. They may need antibiotics or not, and they're able to get through it. So I would just work on supporting them. Like if you have one that's sick, you follow the rest method. I'll post a link to my video about the rest method in the show notes. And then I also have some ideas of just like, you can get some essential oils. I do not put, before I get a comment, I don't put essential oils on my chickens or in my chickens. On them, I will use them if they're like highly diluted in like a specialized product. But I never would put them on my chickens just undiluted. That's just a recipe for disaster. And I don't really put them in my chickens. I've thought about oregano oil. I'm just kind of getting into that. But generally, I'm not a big fan of doing that just because a lot of essential oils can actually be like pretty caustic and can cause problems. So we don't want that. But what I will do if I have a chicken that has a respiratory thing going on, I will get a paper towel or maybe like a car diffuser or something, not an electric diffuser that's going to put moisture into the air, but one of those diffusers where it has like a little pad in it and you put some essential oils on it. You can hang it up in your coop or just get an old rag or a paper towel, put some gentle essential oils on it. I'm talking about lavender, peppermint. You could put thyme. You could put lemon, lime, eucalyptus, clearing essential oils that you can hang up in your chicken coop. And if you have a chicken that's inside that's having some respiratory stuff, you can put that near them. And then just the general supportive things, like if you have a chicken that's actively sick, you want to remove them from the flock. You want to give them electrolytes, vitamins, and probiotics if you can, or even just electrolytes if that's what you can do. I have a recipe for homemade electrolytes. I just did a video about that recently. And just keep them inside and support them. Give them a little bit of TLC. If you're working with a veterinarian and you have an actively sick chicken, I would suggest you contact them because they probably will be able to get you through that. If it's severe, you will need something beyond supportive care. Okay. But I'm sorry that happened. Like I said, I don't think it's a death sentence for your entire flock. Some chickens will handle it better than others. Okay. So good luck with that. All right. Rebecca, I really don't know. So Rebecca asked, we had a few chickens get into poke plants. They are sick. What can I treat them with? I would call a vet for something like that. And I know that is so, I know so many people can't do that. The one thing that comes to mind is something like like charcoal, like activated charcoal, but I wouldn't know the first thing about what dosage you would need. But that comes to mind. So maybe, I bet if you go and just start there and do some searching, you'll probably find what the dosage would be for that, because unfortunately I can't offer that. But I'm sorry. That's awful. I would do the rest method with them too. Bring them inside and give them some TLC, make sure that they're not stressed out and all that stuff. But I'm so sorry that happened. If they're there's certain homeopathics you could use, but I wouldn't know. I would have to know their symptoms and stuff. And I'm not a licensed veterinarian or a licensed homeopath. So Arsenicum album comes to mind. But it depends on how they're presenting their illnesses. So, yeah, I'm so sorry about that. I wish I could be more help. I hope that helps you, just, sending you down the activated charcoal path. All right, I am going to answer one more question, but before I do that, I need to make a very quick announcement. I just want to remind all of you that my book is available for order. Okay, it's currently on Amazon. It's at Barnes and Nobles. It's at Tractor Supply. It's at your local bookstore, I hope. If it isn't, tell them to get it. Okay. I'll leave a link for you in the show notes. It is called Let's All Keep Chickens, the down-to-earth guide to natural practices for healthier birds in a happier world. And it is definitely one of the best things I've ever done. So I do want to share it with you. Please check it out. And thank you so much to those who have already purchased it. I know many of you have. All right. One more question. Lentils. Can I sprout lentils for my chickens? Are they safe? I'm afraid I will kill my chickens. Yes, it's safe. You will not kill your chickens. You can definitely sprout lentils. Okay, that would be good for them. I said okay. Sorry, I said I was going to answer one more question, and there's one more question I want to answer because someone is very concerned. Okay, so Sandy asks, please help. I have a 5-month-old Roo. He just started flogging my 2 grandkids and neighbor kid. He never has before. He is a silky and my buddy. Sandy, I wish that I could 100% tell you, okay, here's what you need to do and this problem will stop. And I know that there are people out there that will say that. But I can't do that because in good conscience, because there's nothing that is 100% guaranteed to stop a rooster from really what he's doing. What he thinks he's doing is his job, protecting the hens. Okay, so that's how he's looking at it. And that is perfectly within his nature. It's really difficult to deal with. And, most people, they wouldn't want to breed a rooster like that. Although I don't think it's necessarily going to pass down to their offspring, but it might. You could pick him up and walk around with him a lot. You could make sure, like, if your grandkids are going into the chicken yard, they need to like carry a big stick or a big broom, and that's not to hit the rooster with, okay? Because we don't do that in Chickenlandia. I mean, unless it was like this super extreme situation where this huge rooster was like coming at somebody's face and then you had to bat it away. But you don't want to like make them more aggressive. But what you're doing is you're giving them kind of the control to like direct the rooster away from them. And I would just make sure to go in there, like they don't go in there without you or without an adult. And if you want to keep this rooster, and you direct this rooster away from the grandkids. But I will say, at some point, I think right now you should make a contingency plan. If these things don't work and it becomes an unlivable situation, a silky rooster's not that small. They're smaller, but they're not super small. And it depends on how old your grandkids are. They can hurt a little kid. And what I have seen so many times is grown adults that are super afraid of chickens because when they were little, they got attacked by a rooster. And I hate to see that. So, try these things, pick them up, walk around with them, maybe turn them, sometimes people say if you turn them like to face backwards and walk around with them, maybe, you have them and you let your grandkids kind of be there with you when you have them. Give them something to make them feel more assertive when they're going into the chicken coop. Make sure you protect them when they're in the chicken coop, when they're in the chicken yard, and have your contingency plan. And just know that for a silky rooster, it won't be as hard for you to find him a home as it would if he was just, a barnyard rooster. Sometimes those guys are really hard to find a home for. But usually silkies, people will want them more. Okay. And I'm sorry that's happening. I hope this helps. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you to my moderator and co-producer, Kelsey Paulus, also known as the Chickenlandia Presidential Advisor. Thank you to Talking to Crows for editing this episode, and to Double M Ranch for their wonderful podcast art. If you enjoyed this podcast, remember, please rate and review it. Go to the Apple Play, what is it? Apple Podcasts or whatever. Review it because that helps me so much. That really, really helps. But the main thing that helps me, and the one thing that I want you to remember the most above everything else, is that you are always welcome in Chickenlandia. Thank you so much. Bye.